everyone. It's so great to have you here. We're so pleased to be with you today. I'm Allie Edwards, the CEO of OC Human Relations. Thank you for joining us today for this very special gala. We're celebrating 30 years of service and dedication to all people of Orange County. Our anniversary theme, Now and Always, expresses the ripple effect created by our past work, all the change we're striving for in each moment, and the impact on our collective future. OCHR is no stranger to resolving conflicts, facing down hate, or leveling the playing field when disenfranchisement arises. Since 1991, we've been pulling people together, starting respectful dialogue, and hosting authentic cultural conversations. The impact of these efforts over time have spread diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the county. We want to help Orange County continue to progress by becoming a safer, more respectful, and inclusive place for all our neighbors, now and always. I'm excited to share what's in store today. First things first, how to best experience this event. You'll see that there's a chat function to the side of your screen. Feel free to say hello during the event. We'll also be thanking our incredible donors throughout the program as gifts are made in real time. You can donate at any time, just about any way you want to give. Your continued support means we're able to provide critical services for victims of hate and provide safe schools for our youth so that all young people can attend school free from violence and bigotry. But that's enough tech talk. Let's get on with the program. While we can't be together in person, we will share and celebrate 30 years of Orange County Human Relations through video, photo, and art, honoring both our past and our future. We are also thrilled to be joined later on by our keynote speaker and guest of honor, Professor John A. Powell. Professor Powell is an expert in the areas of civil rights, civil liberties, structural racism, housing, poverty, and democracy. Professor Powell is the director of the Othering and Belonging Institute at the University of California, Berkeley, a research institute that brings together scholars, community advocates, communicators, and policymakers to identify and eliminate the barriers to an inclusive, just, and sustainable society, and to create transformative change toward a more equitable world. He is a professor of law, African American Studies, and Ethnic Studies at UC Berkeley. We are thrilled to have him join us. To the viewers watching, from me to you, thank you so much for your support in making our vital work possible. You may have also noticed the artist at work. We are joined by a remarkable artist, Amanda Harris-Gibbs, a Los Angeles-based artist known for her captivating, colorful portraits. Right now, she's in the process of painting a truly unique piece for OCHR that captures the essence of our impact for 30 years. You'll have the opportunity to bid on this one-of-a-kind piece in a silent auction in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. The founders of this organization had a vision when they created the Immigrant Rights Coalition of Orange County more than 30 years ago. They saw a place where the most vulnerable among us could find support and allies who were willing to fight alongside them. Not long after the coalition was formed, the state voted to strip unauthorized immigrants of their right to fundamental services like education and emergency care. And while that law would later be struck down, it was proof that their vision was correct. Ours was a much-needed organization. I like to think back to the moment when the County Board of Supervisors encouraged our founder, Rusty Kennedy, to create a nonprofit to further the work of the county's Commission on Human Relations. I bet they never imagined that Rusty, Keith Swain, Becky Esparza, and others would start the Immigrant Rights Coalition, which was later renamed OC Human Relations, and that it would go on to eclipse the commission from which it grew in scope and size. That moment sent a ripple across the water that today has become a wave. Now let's take a look back at some of the achievements of the last 30 years and celebrate the brave people of Orange County who dared to shape a world with marriage equality, a Black president, and an OC Human Relations with an above-ground office. Here are just a few of the key moments and the people who dared to rock the boat and send the ripples of justice across the water. Clearly, we wouldn't be where we are without the dedication and grit of everyone who helped open doors for OCHR to make an impact. We have flourished from the commitment of incredible leaders on our board of directors throughout the years. One of the greatest, hands down, is at the heart of OCHR, one of our founders, Rebecca or Becky Esparza. I am so grateful for the years that Becky committed to our organization and the lessons we learned from her courage. Becky taught us that being a fierce fighter for justice requires a deep and unwavering love of humanity. Here to help us show our gratitude for Becky's lifelong service are longtime board members Ken Inouye and Bill Wood, and former OCHR CEO Rusty Kennedy.
I first met Becky when I attended an Orange County Human Relations Commission meeting as a community member, and Becky was the chair. And during that time, I observed that Becky was very proficient in running the meetings and that she always treated everybody with respect, regardless of the circumstances.
Becky is the consummate community activist. She is cool under pressure, and she leads by example. She is as comfortable with high-level governmental officials as she is with members of her community.
Becky was a devoted wife to her dear husband, Robert, and she certainly is the matriarch of her family.
Becky has used her experience and her knowledge to diffuse conflict in her community. Becky is a natural-born leader. She has been a gift to Orange County for decades. She has made the county a better place to live. Most important to me is that Becky has been a role model for me for over 25 years.
In closing, I want to thank you, Becky, for your dedication, service, and commitment to bringing people together. Your legacy of treating everybody with respect and dignity will certainly be the model that we should all follow as we build safe and inclusive communities both within Orange County and throughout the United States. Miss Becky, we love you, and we congratulate you on your many years of service.
In 1976, Becky Esparza brought together police and Latino youth in the face of growing animosity and violence. A hot summer with no youth activities teamed with police bias towards Latinos to turn every interaction into a life or death confrontation. Seen as a trusted community leader, Becky was able to facilitate dialogue and cool tempers, enabling a safer summer in Stanton. Later, as chair of the Orange County Human Relations Commission, Becky demonstrated a graciousness that overcame the stark differences between communities. Becky stood up for transgender individuals, African Americans, undocumented residents, Asian Pacific Islanders, and others facing injustice and hate. After the Rodney King riots in 1992, Becky co-chaired Orange County Together, the OC Human Relations initiative that spawned living room dialogues, community-oriented policing awards, and what we call deep listening sessions. Becky led the commission to go door to door. That was her orientation. In the neighborhoods, talk with people who are aggrieved and support their voices. She's a strong woman with an orientation around empowering the disenfranchised and standing with them. Becky Esparza stands as a civil rights hero whose selfless voice and actions changed Orange County for the better.
Thank you, Becky. We will carry your strength into our next 30 years. I think it's time to check in on the progress of the painting with Amanda.
My name is Amanda Harris-Gibbs, and I am an artist, formerly from Orange County. I was born and raised there, lived there for about 38 years, and now I'm residing in LA. My art is very bright and colorful. I do all mediums, I move around a lot, and that's why I'm called Wandering Brushes. I really believe that artwork can also be a bridge to link people together. People all interpret things differently, but I feel like when people see my art that they will all feel like, oh, this is definitely inclusive. This is definitely me. I can see myself in those tones. And I really hope that this helps people to come together.
Now and always. How do we live and breathe this statement every day? How do we recognize the progress from 30 years, but see that there is still so much to do to continue to build our healthy future? Please join me in welcoming renowned spoken word artist Ariel Astoria to illustrate how.
Behind every story of victory, of triumph and strides of history being made is a story of all the work it took to get there, all the chipping away at causes that seemed lost for so long. Behind every year of collective progress is a season of separation, of not seeing eye to eye, of forgetting that we all have the same blood pumping through our veins. Yes, behind every victory and collective progress is the moment of pressing 2 feet even more sure into the ground beneath us, knowing what to stand for and why. The moment that history shifts not in a single moment, but gradually over time. With hard work and determination, this is no small feat. It is the constant chiseling away at systems of oppression and exclusivity that do not help promote wholeness or healing of our society, which is why we need organizations such as OCHR that pave way for a new future where diversity, racial equity, acceptance, and love meet at the intersection of legacy and history. Organizations that raise up the leaders of tomorrow to be people of inclusion and belonging, doing the work not only in boardrooms and conference halls, but in living rooms, bringing people from all walks of life around a table of connection and empathy. Small pebbles and still waters turn into a wave. So may these 30 years of progress and forward motion continue now and always. And may you learn that you are a part of this forward motion too. From supporting the work of OCHR to asking the hard question of how do I fit into this bigger story being told? This is not a moment for just right now. This is a movement, now and always, a continuous disrupting of the status quo, a movement, a shared responsibility because no person is an island. We were never meant to do this alone. Hope has always been at our fingertips, and progress only begins if we realize our part to play. So then, only one question remains. Are you the pebble that ripples the wave and the future of not just today, but now and always?
Friends, it has been an honor to be part of the OC Human Relations family for so many years. I'm deeply grateful for those like Rusty Kennedy, Eli Reyna, Ken Inouye, and Bill Wood that built programs in a gray basement, and those like Tina Fernandez who fought so hard and left us too soon. But as we bestow much earned praise on warriors that came before us, we must equally fight for the future warriors who are standing bravely on the front lines, facing down the systems stacked against them, carrying the tools of anti-racism in one hand and the tools of restorative justice in the other. We are doing our part by working with young people across the county in our Bridges program. We are highlighting the unknown civil rights history of Orange County and the impact of our region on the nation. We are facilitating dialogues that focus on bridging mutual understanding. We're helping residents gain the skills to de-escalate violence and approach conflict in a healthy way. And we are supporting nonprofits, educational institutions, and businesses to advance their journey on diversity, equity, and inclusion through a racial equity lens. And most days we're responding to reports from our fellow residents in Orange County who find themselves the targets of hate and bigotry. We know we must do more. This time in our history calls us to be fearless in the face of hate and bigotry. Our divisions call us to rise above our differences and create a space where everyone who is ready to fight for justice can join in. And we can't do that without you. To all of you watching today, we're so happy you're here. For those that are just joining us for the first time, we need your support. For viewers who have supported us, we ask you to continue making those donations and perhaps even do more today. I need you to think about our young people who are waiting for a place that tells them they are worthy, they are beautiful, and that they deserve to live, grow, and love without fear. I need you to think about what it means to be assaulted for who you are and wonder if anyone will care. And then you get a call from Don Hahn, who says, I'm coming to your house to help. And I need you to think about all it will take from us to get to the point that one day we no longer need OC Human Relations because we have created a society that accepts, supports, and loves its own. So please, today, take a moment to make a contribution. Let's send another ripple across the water. Together, we can transform that ripple into a wave that reaches across injustice and inequality to shape a world of peace, acceptance, and opportunity for everyone, now and always. It's that time of the program to reveal the finished painting. But before that, let's hear a little bit more about the piece from Amanda.
I really wanted to do something that signified people coming together, not only Orange County, but justice and hope, and something that would spark a sense of emotion when people saw it. So what I did was create a lot of different skin tones reaching together to support the orange, which signifying Orange County basically. And around it I added some flowers that kind of signified justice. The main flower is the Black-Eyed Susan, and what that is a justice flower that means empowerment. It means change. It means positive change, actually. It means movement. It means all these great things, so I wanted to make sure that I included that in the piece. I really believe that artwork can also be a bridge to link people together, and I really hope that this helps people to come together.
Wow, Amanda, what an incredible piece. We're so honored that you created this for our organization and for the people of Orange County. We couldn't be happier. The finished painting, titled Orange County Together, will be available for auction in the coming weeks on our website. Make sure to check back for more information. Part of the legacy we're all building here is about shaping the mindful, responsible, and influential leaders of the next generation. I'd like you to meet our youngest board member, Cielo Chavarria. Cielo is a senior at Fountain Valley High School and will be attending Wellesley University in the fall. We met Cielo when she was in the 9th grade, and she quickly became a leader in her school's Bridges program. Today, Cielo is our youth board member and an inspiration to us all. In addition to leading efforts at her school to create a safe and a welcoming campus, Cielo is one of the founding members of a racial equity task force in her school district known as Education Organizers for Racial Equity. Tell us how you're making your own waves, Cielo.
My name is Cielo Chavarria, and I'm very grateful to be celebrating OC Human Relations' 30th anniversary with you. I'm currently a senior at Fountain Valley High School, where I'm very proud to work for a more inclusive and loving campus as president of the OC Human Relations Bridges Club. I also have the honor of serving as a youth board member of the OC Human Relations Board of Directors. As you know, OC Human Relations was founded in 1991, 12 years before I was born, which means that I was born into an Orange County where OC Human Relations has created a community that is more loving and inclusive. Personally, OC Human Relations has motivated me to build bridges at my school, to be an ambassador for inclusion in my neighborhood, and as a board member, I now have a seat at the table where important decisions are made by a diverse board of directors. For the last 4 years, I've witnessed OCHR make Orange County a better place. It has done so by educating our future generation about our history and our responsibility to civil rights, by being an ever-present refuge and resource for victims of hate crimes, and by being a mediator that fosters healing and reconciliation and progress. Doing what OCHR does may not always be popular. It certainly isn't easy, but it is vital if we are going to live out our American ideals. History and wisdom alike call on us to stand against hate and rise above it, or it will inevitably suffocate us all. In his poem, Martin Niemöller, a German pastor, spoke to us. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. I've seen Orange County heed Niemöller's call time and time again. Mr. Ken Inoue has heeded Niemöller's call by coming to schools and educating students about Japanese American internment and our responsibility to speak up and uphold the dignity of human beings. And of course, the Mendez family has heeded his call for 75 years by believing that everyone is entitled to a quality education and equal opportunity. OCHR has taught us all that a more loving community requires unity. And so this is why you are here today, why we are all here as neighbors, as allies, as human beings. We must have the wisdom to see that hate is not only wrong, but counterproductive. So today we come together to uproot hate and plant seeds of love so that we can harvest a better community. And the seeds to a stronger and more united Orange County are in our heart. If we want unity, if we truly want justice, we must embody justice, not just perform it. Social justice demands that we be models of decent human beings. We must live our lives and construct a society that dignifies all human beings. A society that recognizes that Black Lives Matter. A society that stops Asian hate. A society that recognizes and treats immigrants as human beings. As humans, we have the opportunity and the power to heal one another through kindness. Bobby Kennedy said, "It is from numberless, diverse acts of courage that human history is thus shaped. Each time a man stands up for an ideal, or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope. And crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance." Thank you for your time and support, now and always.
Hello, my name is John Powell. I'm the director of the Othering and Belonging Institute, and it's a delight to have a chance to talk to you by video. And I appreciate the work you're doing down in Orange County, and I know it can be challenging. So I'm going to take about 20 minutes to share with you some PowerPoints, and then hopefully at some point we'll also arrange questions at a later time. This talk is going to be about From Othering to Belonging, a journey of identity, transformation, and bridging for Orange County. So on today, this journey, we're going to be talking about othering in Orange County. What is othering? What creates othering? The importance of identity and bridging. These are some demographics of Orange County, which I'm sure you know much better than I. The largest population, but still a minority, is whites, then Latinx and Asian, very small Black and Indigenous population. Orange County, like most of the country, has experienced a rapid increase in hate crime. In the last 5 years, there's been a 1,000% increase in hate crime targeting Asian Americans. Orange County also sent people to the insurrection on January 6th. And there's a history of it being a sundown town where the Klan has been very present and Blacks' presence has been quite small. It has a long history of anti-immigrants. And the indigenous community has felt largely neglected and marginalized. In today's climate, there's a strong anti-mask, anti-vax sentiment. And the county's demographics and political affiliation are in a period of rapid change. And you'll see in a minute that that's particularly important. What I want to suggest is that the problem of the 21st century, and this is playing on W.B. Du Bois, is othering. Some of you may know that beginning of the 20th century, W. Du Bois said the color line was the problem of the 20th century. Well, now I would say that line is the line of othering, still around color or race in the United States, but also around other axes in different parts of the world. How we other people, which is generally a process of refusing to acknowledge a group's humanity, their full membership, and their full dignity. But there's no natural other. How we other people, or who we decide to put into the category of other, is deeply social. And it can be along any axis: ability, gender, sexuality, race, ethnicity, age, skin tone, class, caste, and many others. In a society, when we recognize that people are being other, sometimes we think the way to address that is something I call saming. That is to say to people, you're just like me, or you need to assimilate and be like me, and then you will be okay. What we suggest is that the opposite of othering is not saming, but belonging. Before we get into belonging, let's think about and talk about why othering is a global problem now, and by all accounts, why it's accelerating. And this graph basically shows that we're in a period of rapid change, at least on 4 or 5 axes: demographic change, climate, technology, globalization, economic change, and of course the pandemic itself. When we're experiencing rapid change, it also causes increased anxiety. That's a natural response of mammals, not just humans. But what we do with that anxiety is shaped largely by leadership's narratives, structures, and organizing. And there are 2 major ways in which we deal with this anxiety. One is called breaking. When you take this anxiety and basically identify a group that supposedly is the source of it, a group that is deserving of our fear and anger, of our disgust, and that group becomes deeply othered and is seen as a threat. When that happens, bad things happen to that group and to societies at large. That's called breaking. Another way of responding to these deep changes in anxiety is to acknowledge that, yes, we're changing both in terms of our country, our society, and even our own identities. But we're actually building something new. We're building something where we all can participate, and we're willing to listen to and engage other people in their stories. This empathetic listening or compassionate listening is what we call bridging. These are the 2 major ways in which we respond to this anxiety. One is to create a smaller, exclusive we, where everyone outside that we is a threat, and don't deserve our respect and dignity, or a larger we, where we say no one is outside the circle of human concern. These axes can take place along many different lines. So there's political breaking. There's breaking in terms of economic segregation. There's breaking along racial segregation, urban and rural, and many others. Identities can be mobilized as a threat. And I suggest it can be mobilized, that it's not a natural process, that there are people who are interested in us actually turning on each other and breaking. You may wonder why. Oftentimes it's for power, both economic and political. So identity can be used to increase polarization, and it can be used to decrease polarization. In this environment where a number of people are concerned about polarization, we assume that identity is the problem. And it's not identity per se, it's actually whether we are breaking or bridging. We're actually in a very tense situation right now, and the conditions that causes this anxiety is only going to increase. So it's not just the last election or the last two elections. There are things that are happening throughout the world that's causing people to actually polarize. And that polarization is being organized by the elites. And at the extreme, we see that the very container of society is starting to crack. When that happens, everyone feels othered. Every group feels like they're under threat and they don't belong. So identity matters, and it happens at different levels. It happens at the individual level, the self level, at the community level, and at the world level. And at every level it matters, although the expression of this and experience of this at these different levels vary. So we're talking largely about social identity, not just individual identity. How does society see you? How does society respond to you? When society sees you and responds to you as a threat, that identity becomes more salient in order to protect itself. We're experiencing today what we call stacked identities or interwoven identities. That is, where one identity is linked to another identity. So our political identity in the United States is now linked to race, is now linked to feelings of immigration, is now linked to religion. And if those identities become stacked and rigidly connect to each other, it creates tension and inability to actually be flexible. One of the aspects of stacked identity is what we call the Golden Age Fallacy. That is, there's a memory, even though it's not necessarily a memory of something that actually happened, of when things were fine. And in dominant groups, this means when we ruled, when Father knows best, as you may recognize this as Leave It to Beaver, when the place of women, the place of non-Christians, the place of Blacks was clear. And this is oftentimes seen as when America was great again, or when India was great again, or when Turkey was great. These times were never as good as we think they were, and they were always full of conflict. These memories are not accurate reflections, but it's a kind of nostalgia. And the interesting way, it's not just the nostalgia for the past, it's the nostalgia for the future. So when we fight over the past, we're really fighting over the future. And we all are concerned that there may be unfolding a future where we might not belong. So part of the thing that you might do in Orange County is to help people both reflect on their past, but also help them create a belonging where we all belong. Can we imagine new structures that honor our multiple and fluid identities? I talked about stack identities, but the identities in which we can recognize that are both multiple and fluid. We all have more than one identity, even though under a different situation, any one identity will become more salient. And structures matter in terms of how we experience identity and how we experience the world. And so this is not just at an interpersonal level, it's also at a cultural and structural level. Structures are not neutral. They do work. So think about an airplane in the good old days, or maybe not so good old days, when we used to fly. You get on an airplane and there are luggage racks on the airplane. Those racks are not neutral. They reflect certain design biases. So for example, luggage racks are generally overhead. What group is disadvantaged by that? Shorter people. What group is shorter? Well, as a group, women are shorter than men. And as a group, women have less upper body strength than men. And this last statement may seem to be controversial, but I think it's probably accurate. As a group, women carry more luggage than men. So they're really disadvantaged by this design. This is important because structures and designs can bias and disadvantage people without intent. So I'm not asserting that someone designed luggage racks to punish women, but nonetheless, it puts women at a disadvantage. And many women try to navigate this disadvantage by checking their luggage, which might mean they have to get to the airport an hour early and wait an extra half an hour to pick up their luggage if it was not lost. Here's another example. Take an escalator. Structures are designed to do some work. In this case, an escalator is designed to take people from one floor to the next. What if you're doing a wheelchair? That structure does not work for you. The structure wasn't designed for you. The structure is othering you. It's saying you don't belong in this place. Again, no claim that someone designed an escalator to disadvantage people in a wheelchair. Doesn't matter. We need to look and see what structures are doing, not necessarily what we intended them to do. So in an earlier slide, you may remember we suggested that the problem of othering is not addressed by saming, but by belonging. And belonging says you don't have to become like someone else in order to participate. Belonging involves co-creation. So you co-create the very thing you belong to. You are one of the designers. In that respect, belonging is actually more robust and deeper than inclusion, which is oftentimes about joining something that someone else created. It's about being a guest in someone else's home or someone else's party. Belonging is about co-creating. So you're not a guest, you're a co-creator. In order to co-create and belong, you have to have agency, power, responsibility, and care. And when you're engaged in belonging, you're not just creating belonging for yourself, but belonging for everyone, belonging without othering. So can we co-create a future together? Can you co-create what Orange County might look like in the future, not just for your group, however you define that, but for every group? That requires creating new stories, new narratives, and even new identities. One of the mechanisms for doing this is called bridging. We talked about bridging earlier, but there are short bridges and there are long bridges. So short bridges are bridges with people who you actually already know you share a great deal with. It could be other family members, members of your church or your school, where you have some common agreements, but you still have tension. Those bridges tend to be shorter. Longer bridges are bridges where you have a hard time imagining connecting with someone. Maybe one person is a Bernie supporter and another is a Trump supporter. So I suggest to people, as we learn the practice of bridging, which engages in empathetic and compassionate listening and practice, we start with short bridges. But we also remember, as Bell Hooks reminded us, that bridges are made to walk on, which means when you become a bridger, it's likely that you will be misunderstood by your community and the community you're trying to bridge to. Most of the work around bridging in the United States happen at the interpersonal level, bringing two people together to talk to each other, maybe to have a meal together. And that's really important work. But what we're experiencing now is not polarization at the individual level. We're experiencing intergroup polarization that's organized by the elites. In order to bridge in that situation, you need a very different set of practices. Also, most of the work that's around bridging in the United States does not pay attention to power. And power is positional, structural, and hierarchical. And you don't have to have absolute equality to bridge with another group or another person. But when the power differential becomes too great, the capacity to bridge actually is dissipated. So there's some situations where we have to pay attention to power, but many of them we don't. So I want to take us on a short journey. In the United States or in the world, if you go back 400 years, 500 years, there's virtually no expression of equality. The whole world was unequal, and people claimed that one people were superior, better than another people by birth, because of gender. And about 400, 300 years ago, we started embracing the concept, really coming from Aristotle, that equality actually mattered. And if you think about the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, even though we didn't live up to it, it says something to the effect that we hold these truths self-evident, that all men, let's change that, all people are created equal. What that means is that people don't have to prove their equality. It's self-evident. That's equality. I mentioned Aristotle, but Aristotle, who's the fountainhead for equality in the West, also understood that when people are situated the same, equality and fairness says they should be treated the same. But when people are situated differently, equality and fairness requires they are treated differently. That's sometimes what we refer to as equity. But the way equity is practiced in our society is almost entirely trying to deal with disparities. And it's not that disparities don't matter, but the goal is not to get what another group has. The goal is something different. And we should be clear on what that goal is. For example, before the Affordable Care Act, about 70% of whites had insurance, about 50% of blacks, and about 25% of Native Americans. Latinos were in the middle. Asians were closer to whites. What's the goal? It's not to get what whites have, 70%. It's not just to close that disparity. It's to get everyone health insurance. That's the universal. That's the universal goal. But the practice of getting there needs to be targeted. It needs to be targeted based on the structure and situatedness of each group. So we don't treat everybody the same when they're situated differently, but we do have universal goals. And we call that targeted universalism. I sometimes refer to this as equity 2.0. Belonging is a basic need. Once you start looking for it, you see it in psychology, you see it in medicine, you see it in law, you see it in political science. But we're talking about belonging in a particular way. We're talking about belonging without othering. So many people feel like they belong to a group, but oftentimes it's predicated on another group not belonging or another group not being seen as fully human. And so we're talking about building bridges where we all belong. So we're not just bridging to each other, which we are, we're also bridging with the future. How do we do this? It requires that we transform society. It requires that we engage in structures and institutions. It requires that we look at each other, that we confront our anxiety. It also requires leadership. So both bridging and target universalism is one of the ways we move toward belonging. And both bridging and target universalism requires that we have trust. And if that trust is not there, then we have to do things to actually build it. Now, you're in Orange County, many of you are associated with institutions and doing institutional work. How do you actually bridge with others, other institutions and other communities? Finally, I will say, it's not something you will decide in isolation. The very process of doing that requires not just trust building, but co-creation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Powell, for being part of the 30th anniversary program. For 30 years, we've brought people together to foster understanding, build community, and resolve conflict. Today, as our time together comes to an end, I ask you to look forward with me to the next era of OC Human Relations. In 2021, we must examine the needs that remain unmet after 30 years. How can we use our influence and expertise to move issues like racial equity forward? When I think about these questions, I know we need to be bold in our answers. We need to ask more of our leaders and to better champion the solutions that students and communities deserve. We need to do all of this in more ways, in more languages, and with more collaborators. We can work to change hearts and minds and systems. We can respond to the perpetrators of hate, but also address the structures that hold the racist sins of our nation's past in their foundations. We can't change our history, but we can step up to take responsibility, push for accountability and justice, and change our future. I hope you will join me in acting courageously to heighten the impact of our work, because justice can't wait.